Hello again and welcome. It's Kurt and Denette, just two best friends having conversations. And today we wanted to take just a moment to dive a little deeper into our story.
Mm-hmm.
Those that know us have heard us talk about it. Those who know us for a long time have watched us walk through it. But there's a lot of feelings and emotions and processes that go into play when you are talking about infidelity, broken trust, verbal and emotional abuse, anger and abandonment. There's a lot that goes into that. And so today we thought we'd just have a candid conversation. This is probably the first time that we have had just a raw, real conversations about the feelings, the pain. Obviously those have come up in many of our conversations, the feelings and the pain and how you walk through it all, but just the two of us doing it this way. And the reason we're doing it is in conversation. We truly believe that, we may be a little further down the highway, of life when it comes to certain topics. And there are couples that are just getting on that highway and don't know what they don't know, are experiencing and feeling a lot of things. And we just kind of want to be a voice today to go, one, your feelings are normalized. Here's what people feel. But yet here's also some tools. Here's some hope that we can give as well from someone who may be a little bit further down the journey.
Yeah, to clarify, we've talked about this obviously in length in the coaching room because it is our story. We have talked about it on, platforms with groups of people, but in this dynamic or on the podcast, we have yet to have a full, in-depth conversation about all what goes into a really, really, really broken marriage. And I want to clarify before we even get started, not every scenario is going to end up like ours, and not every scenario should. We are going to talk about some really hard subjects, and the hardest being infidelity for me. Well, for us and our marriage, but not all couples should walk that out because every marriage is different. So I just want to clarify that. I don't want anyone that's watching this today to feel like, oh man, I don't know that I would do that, or your scenario might be different than ours. And so we, in our story, got to see God do an amazing, amazing thing. But not everybody does.
Yeah.
And so if that's you, I just want you to know that that doesn't mean that wasn't supposed to be maybe the decision you should have made.
But you also may be walking through something wondering, can I want to, my partner wants to, but we just don't know. And we're going to be very good voices in that regard.
Yeah.
Someone who wanted to rebuild trust and was trying to find a way to forgive. Someone who knew they had broken trust in a mighty way and wanted to see wholeness and healing. That made our story and our journey one that we could walk out. We say it often, if I had had a hard heart and not wanted to change, not wanted to do different, our story wouldn't be our story.
Correct.
So it was kind of these two worlds coming together, and we just want to give hope and clarity for those ones that are going, how do I do this?
Yeah. So to start, let's kind of talk about those early days. Like for us, we met in high school. We got married at 19 and 20, which is crazy to think that we thought we were ready for marriage at 19 and 20. And yet we did. And those first few years for us were chaotic, would be an understatement. We had 3 little boys. Very quickly, by the time I was 21, we had our first, and then within another 5 years, we had 2 more. But looking back at those early years for us, what were some of the thoughts that you had when we were at our most broken, or you specifically were at your most broken?
Yeah, I had a beautiful family. I think that's what I wrestle with so much. Um, but I was so broken on the end. I was just selfish. I mean, there's really no other way to do that. I had everything and seemed to want everything more or everything different. And what I had, nothing brought this. I was um, so searching for anything, I think, to numb pains or failures that I had, that no matter what you did, no matter these three beautiful boys that were just larger than life and always running around smiling, um, it just was an emptiness inside of me to go, yeah, that's all great. I had that, but man, I this this fast, just selfish, you know, only thinking of Kurt mentality that caused an emptiness. I was just not happy. I don't think I was happy with, like, I had you, that was this beautiful gift. I had three boys, it was a beautiful gift. But inside I wasn't happy with Kurt. And so because I wasn't like at peace with Kurt, there was always this longing to not numb necessarily my outside because everything I had was beautiful. It was more, I'm going to do this selfish stuff to numb the inside because I'm not happy with me.
Mm.
But what it did was compound well, I'm not happy with me, so I'm going to numb it with this. Now I'm really not happy with me because I shouldn't have done that. So now I'm going to numb it with this. And it built this spiraling out of control person that was just prideful, arrogant, and selfish in a way that was terrible. Terrible to my home, terrible to you, terrible in the way I responded, terrible in the way I treated people. Yeah, just it was a volcano inside of me that was never settled.
Mm. Yeah, I think when I really look back on those days and I remember, like, at that point in life, you were in the construction world. Um, I almost remember feeling like I needed to brace for you to come home. Like, even though, and I love, love, love being a mom, and having three little boys was unbelievable. Even in the chaos of that, I think it was hard to not feel like, oh, dad's going to come home and there'll be a relief. Like, dad'll come home and he's going to help, focus on the kids. It was almost like oh, dad's going to come home, brace for it, because you were so angry in those early days. You were never physically hurtful. I fully believe that had our story not come out the way that it did, we probably not even, I don't think I'd still be here, right?
Mm,
And I also think had you been physically hurtful to me, especially the boys, I wouldn't be here.
no.
But your words and your actions and your coldness specifically, um, gosh, I remember those days were so hurtful.
Yeah. I remember, I think those are, and this is where you have the ability to look back on this, 30,000-foot view of those first 8 years. And I remember thinking I was like coming home to a peaceful house. And I wasn't coming home to a peaceful house. I was coming home to a scared home. I know that now. I remember, I used to like demand that I needed 30 to 45 minutes of just pure quietness to to ease my soul after work. And I thought that was peace,
Mm.
but it was trepidation. I mean, everybody's hiding in their room because if we walk across, we might get yelled at, or something's not right, or something's not done right. And that thought that this was peace, but in actuality, it was scared. That's a lot of homes. The peace that you think that you have is nothing more than the fear of another human being. And man, I'm so sorry, because I remember that and just how skewed it was in my head that, oh, now I'm peaceful. So now after 30 minutes, Now I can interact with everyone because my brain's settled.
Mm.
Now I know what it looks like to come home to a peaceful home. And a peaceful home can have laughter and voices and people running around and jumping in the pool. That's peaceful.
Yeah.
Quiet and scared does not equal peace.
Well, and I think when I look back, because obviously, here, here we are almost 29 years later, looking back as a much more confident, strong woman, I think in that season of life for me, I felt as though it was almost my duty to give you what you needed, right? And not require or expect more. Um, and so, yeah, it was very difficult for me to process that in that season of life. It's like, as long as I can keep him happy and make him feel like whatever benefits his soul, as long as I can do that for him, it doesn't really matter what I need. And looking back, that's such a horrible, horrible mentality. Like I didn't voice my needs. I didn't voice, or if I did and it was met with any backlash or any put down or any form of pushback, I just shrunk and was like, as long as I can keep the peace and I can keep the house happy, let's let daddy have his space, whatever that looks like. And I think I was so heavy-hearted for how much I thought potentially you were carrying outside of the home. Now I realize a lot of what you were carrying was shame, and a lot of what you were carrying was guilt, and a lot of what you were carrying were things that I necessarily didn't cause.
Mm-mm.
But because I didn't know those things, I thought, man, he's really carrying the weight of providing for this family. And what I thought was provision, which was financial
Mm-hmm.
provision, there wasn't emotional provision. And I didn't know I could require that, or I didn't know I could even ask. I don't know if require is a good word, but I didn't even know I could ask for it or how to ask for it.
Yeah.
And so when you think back on those early days, did you feel as though being a provider financially was all that we deserved?
I don't know that deserved. I know I owed it to you and the boys to provide. I had watched my dad growing up like the consummate provider, just worked hard to make it happen. I knew that behavior. I don't think what I comprehended or really knew was that my position in our family, yes, provision is part, but leadership and guidance is just as valuable. For me, it was not, I provided. And so that created this dictatorship that now I'm owed something because I did this. And this relationship is transactional, right? Like I'm providing. So now because I'm doing that, I should get this and this and this and this. Well, that's not the way marriage works. And that's not the way relationships work. And so then when there started being gaps, I already had hurts and pains and like frailties and shame and guilt. I already had these things. And so what then I did is I disguised um my not being happy with something. I disguised it as I'm just going to counter, and this is what life is. So I got to go make myself happy. Because I didn't know how to talk. I didn't know open communication. I didn't know that we could have honest, real conversations about sex and intimacy and like needs, wants, desires. I didn't know we could do any of that. I didn't know we could talk about emotional intimacy. I didn't even know what that was. Like to be emotionally intimate and how that actually creates and causes physical intimacy. That was never a thing for me. Let's have sex and then we'll be close. Well, that's not the way that works either. So it's kind of like there were gaps in my life that I didn't know one, that was even a thing. How do I emotionally? And I'm sure people were like, "What are we, idiot?" I was young, like I didn't know. How would I know? And then not knowing how to deal with that caused me to make choices that were just selfish in nature. They were momentary and fleeting, and whether that was, you know, playing softball 4 or 5 nights a week and then weekend tournaments, whether that was being away from the home, whether that was, going out with the guys all the time, whatever that was, I just kept masking my needs and my wants under selfish.
I think one thing that it just actually hit me, I don't know that we've ever even discussed this, but I think one thing that a lot of people don't give credence to, or like even the words to, is the shame as the spouse that isn't the one that is potentially stepping out of the marriage. The shame that I'm not enough, or the shame of feeling like you should be more physically present when the emotional presence isn't received.
Mm.
And it's a hard battle. It's this constant, like, man, I want to be physically vulnerable, but it's very difficult to be physically vulnerable with someone that you don't fully know. And there's parts of you in that season of life, thank God, we're 21 years removed from that. That's why we're even able to have this
Yeah.
conversation, right? And why we use our story to have this conversation with multiple other couples. But when I look back at that time and realize, even in that, it feels like a bait and switch. Like I should be physically accessible to someone who's not emotionally accessible to me. And that's a really difficult place to be.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of unhealthy men, and I'll say it, that
And women.
don't believe emotions are part of this whole thing. Like, emotion is weakness, and to be intimate is non-negotiable, but physical intimacy is a must, always needs to be there. And that's the way they live life. For us, that just wasn't, we don't teach that now. Now I know a lot of truth, and I've seen a lot of health, and I know how relationships work a little bit, and so the emotional part is such a key, but that emotional part I kept very much under lock and key. Like I just wasn't open like that, there was times in that season that I'm with an accountability group of guys that don't know me like that, because I kept to me just the arrogance and the pride and the selfishness of myself to go, I'm going to do all these things that I might look that I'm doing the part, but inside I'm so empty and so full of shame. And listen, this is zero excuse, but you go to all these things and you listen. We were attending church at the time, right? I'm doing accountability groups. I've got godly friends. So I'm constantly hearing all the conversations. And it wasn't this mindset of mine like, oh, man, I'm pulling over. Huh? It literally was like, bro, you are doing so wrong. And now I'm so deep in this thing. It's the only way I know to numb. I can't be honest with anybody because my whole world will fall apart, because I would know at that point, like, this is gone. Like everything I have, and I don't want that. But yet I just keep choosing this selfishness to numb the emptiness inside of me, no matter what was given me. And God could give me, we had a beautiful home, and you were gorgeous, and the kids were great, and playing t-ball, and a family that loved, doing all the things. And this Kurt was just a shell, he's like really, really empty, and didn't know, but I didn't know what I didn't know. No, now 21 years removed from that, knowing what fullness, knowing where joy comes from, knowing how to have joy even in the darkest of time, knowing how to stand when it's hard to stand, knowing that some days I got to make a hard decision. Now I know all that, and I'm able to operate as hard as it is. I'm able to move and operate in it. Well, as a kid, zero excuse. I just didn't know what I didn't know.
So looking back, like for us, our stories is a little different than others. That emotional healing, emotional connection started for us before um actually all of the truth of the scenarios
Yeah.
were lived out. What did that look like for you? The day that you started to at least turn your life around and begin to pursue my heart, become the father you wanted to be, become the man you wanted to be. Like obviously that was like 8 years in, but those two stories didn't coincide.
No.
Like the truth still wasn't revealed.
Yeah. So I remember June 2006. My life is what it is. All this stuff that we're talking about, it just, we were in that season, and I'm walking out of my door. I took a phone call, got angry in the phone call, and threw my phone, fell to my knees, gave my heart to the Lord, confessed that I was a sinner, and if God saw fit to save me, I would spend the rest of my life on any platform I could talking about him. Stood up, looked at my wife, and went, I got to go to Bible college. And even Denette at the time was like, wait, what? What are you talking about? Yeah, I just gave my life to the Lord, and all I knew to do was go to Bible college. That was 2006. Okay. Now, from that moment, what Danette saw was a man that a month and a half later was in Bible college. Started like,
Which is what it is. It's not like that's the end all be all. Like Bible college
no,
is
that was
Bible
just in
college.
our season. That's what I
Yeah.
did. And then I just started like earnestly pursuing the Lord. What does it mean to walk this thing out? What does it mean to like be a faithful son and going to Bible college? And then I get picked up and I'm doing recreation. So I started immersing myself in the world and in God's word to go, okay, this is now what it means. Well, this is what it means that God would so love me in my brokenness, forgive me of all of that stuff, take away, this shame and this guilt, although I didn't really release it fully at that time. I didn't have the conviction of it at that time that I had. I was able to start loving you differently.
What do you mean you didn't have the conviction? Explain that.
When I had shame and the condemnation, not conviction.
Okay.
When I was walking in shame and guilt in 2005, 2004, that pain caused me to go numb. I didn't want to feel that shame and that guilt. So I just continued compounding my issue. I just felt condemnation less than, well, in 2006, giving my life to the Lord takes away that condemnation. Now I know I'm set free of it, but I still had shame and guilt. I knew I was no longer guilty of my sin, but I had shame from my past, and didn't at that time go, hey, let me confess everything. I just started learning, hey, let's learn to live what does it mean to walk with the Lord?
Yeah. For me in that season, potentially for someone who might be listening, I don't know, like this wasn't an overnight healing for me. This wasn't a immediate conversion story, like, you fell to your knees and gave your heart and started walking differently, and he really did. I say all the time that I've been married one time to two different men because it's literally true. But for me, it was the start of forgiveness. It was but microscopic movement and okay, maybe potentially we will work out. We were so broken in that season that there were multiple times, but specifically one day in particular, I remember saying, I believe that God has so much for you and you're going to be an amazing man. I just don't know that I'll be here to see it. I didn't know that our story would end up well. I had seen moments of clarity. I'd seen moments of you trying to heal. And so it was difficult for me to realize, can I believe this change? I had been praying for you for years at that point. There was a book that I went through in some of my most broken seasons called Power of a Praying Wife that I would read over him while he slept after coming in late at night. And I remember reading it, not even fully believing the words I was reading. It was more out of anger. It was more out of frustration. It was more out of, I don't know how to keep living in this scenario that I've been given. And yet I didn't feel, for whatever reason, I feel like now we have clarity on that reason because we walk alongside, unfortunately, so many couples that are working through healing and redemption. But like in that season, I didn't know that I'd ever see what all this was for.
Yeah. I mean, that was the early part of it. I know you had to walk through a lot of that process of rebuilding and regaining trust. And for our story, um, 2006, I give my life to the Lord. We start walking this process of, wait, what does like being godly married look like? Because we weren't. I just give my life to the Lord, but you know, in August, we're learning how to do this because in May, I was a complete train wreck. We're walking this thing out and we get into a good groove. Things 5, 6, 7 years, God's now taking us crazy places. We're seeing ministry in a mighty way.
I did have an amazing coach in my life as well that helped
Yeah.
me through.
And
Yeah.
we're just like, we're doing it. And it's crazy, but somehow we're doing it. But Danette still never knew the story. She knew I had given my life to the Lord,
Hmm.
but she didn't know what I had been forgiven of. And so it's easy to start jumping on that train of seeing health and let's go be godly and man, let's see this healing. That's all easy when you don't know the pain in which you were taken from. The depravity of your spouse and really what was caused. And in my mind, guys, I'm not gonna lie, like and it was easier to not even talk about it. Let's just get healthy and be healthy. Like, I'll never be that person again. I'm thankful God radically redeemed and restored me. Man, let's move forward and all is great. We're going to start building. We're building a foundation for our home that we've never had. But in that moment, our foundation was truly being built on sand because you really didn't know. All she knew was you were once this, now you're this. Praise God, I like this new guy way more than my last guy.
Yeah, I didn't know how far you had gone in the beginning of our marriage, and I didn't know how much you had strayed. I didn't know those things. I only knew what I had seen with my own 2 eyes at the house. And so, yeah, we're walking in this beautiful new season. We're walking in emotional connection and healing and wholeness, and God's even like allowing us to be parts of like crazy stories and crazy ministries and all of these things. But there was a part of me that knew there was something I didn't know. And I'll never forget that Easter in 2013. The only way I can describe it is I feel like the Holy Spirit said, you need to ask him this question. And so I did. I said, I need to know something, and I need to know the truth. And again, this is, gosh, 7 years after watching you be in a healed and a whole mindset and in a loving, caring, compassionate relationship with me and your boys. And it was one of those questions that like you're almost like, I don't want to ask because I don't want to know. And yet I had to know. Like I felt as if there was something that anyone else would know about you more so than I knew about you, then I didn't fully know you.
Hmm. Do you think that's for you? And that was like who you are. Would you encourage that behavior for everyone? Is that not for everyone? Are there some types of relationships that can thrive? But in your experience, like, how would you encourage someone else going through that same thought process?
I guess that's a hard question to answer for someone else. In my shoes, in my seat, I think in order for us to be who we are today,
Hmm.
that had to be released. I think
100%.
I think there would always be this looming part, this closet of yours that you had sealed away that I didn't have access to. There would be shame and guilt that you would be waiting one day for me to find out if it hadn't been revealed. And there's no way in my perspective that that wouldn't cause some kind of tension or some kind of disconnect in our relationship.
That's what I firmly, I second all of that. I do believe that honesty and vulnerability got us the start of where we are today. I do too also believe that you can not care, but if in the back of someone's mind it's that looming question, it creates a fear that the enemy toys on. It creates differences in reactions and responses and behaviors when you're always wondering of the unknown. So we are huge fans of having very open, honest communication. That did not mean, I mean, again, all seasons and stories are different. Um, it may not be detail upon detail, but an overarching truthful question is answered. For us, it was details. But here's the thing that happened that Easter of 2013. I was on staff at a church at the time, and I'll never forget getting partnered with a volunteer that was just serving at this large church on Easter, and me just doing it that time. I've once God saved my heart, I fell in love with wanting to know people's stories. What makes you tick? How do you move? What's your history? And so I remember asking him, just tell me your story. And he's like, "Oh, Pastor Curry, you're not going to believe this." And I said, "Well, I want to know it." He's like, "Well, for a lot of my life, I was unfaithful in my marriage, and I was very verbally abusive to my wife. Now I'm tuned in because now I'm like, oh, well, wait, these have a lot of similarities now. This is crazy because I was those things too." And he goes, "Then I never told my wife, and I stopped and gave my life to the Lord. And then one day she just walked in and asked me, 'Have you ever cheated on me?' And I'm telling you, like I was like mouth drop, listen to this guy because I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's literally." And I was thinking to myself, I hope my wife never asked me that question. Like I would just goes away. And he said, "I did that day what I had never done before, and I was honest. And now, man, we have the greatest marriage ever." And like I get emotional because in that moment I'm like, because I remember thinking like, I think we have a great marriage because I had 7 years of what we had never had the previous 8. But then it starts weighing on you of, wait, but if she doesn't know half of who I am, do we have a great marriage? Or am I waiting for this house of cards to crumble at some point?
Yeah.
But I hope she never asked me that question. That's all I care about. Don't ask me the question. But I don't know if I'm playing with a house of cards right now.
And then you come home that day and I ask you the question.
Literally. It went an hour and a half later
Yeah.
in my bedroom, and you look at me, I need to ask you a question. And I'm telling you, it was like, oh my, but that was my moment. That was my moment in 2013 that I believe it was like, I'm going to set you up so that you can see and hear what I can do. It may be hell walking that process out.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to see and hear what I can do. And getting up there and hearing that, it was like the last time of just going, well, I know I don't want a house of cards. I know I just listened to a man tell me it can be, and all this thing is like, I mean, it was so fast.
I remember watching you sit in that chair in our bedroom, and I remember watching your brain think as I was asking, and you didn't answer quickly. You hesitated. And that hesitation was the answer.
The answer to had you ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a real moment of just trying to figure out like, Whew, this may be it. We're 15 years in now. 3 sons that, I mean, now everyone has known 7 years of, 6 years of Pastor Kurt, 7 years of this man who loves his family, loves his wife, loves Jesus, loves people. Like, this is what they know. And now it's about to, but I just can't live another day wondering when it will. Or I'm going to take this tool away from the enemy. I'm going to confess to the person who I say I love the most, but yet I've hidden the most from and hurt the most. And so I just remember doing it and laying it out there. And, for us, it was a rough year and a half after that.
I'd say close to 2 years, yeah.
Yeah.
I think, um, yeah, it was to say that the wind was knocked out of me is an understatement. For me, although I'm thankful that our story played out in the timeline that it did. I'm not thankful that I was being lied to, obviously. Um, but I know that I know had everything come out anytime sooner, we wouldn't be sitting here today. Um, my heart needed to see you restoring your soul. My heart needed to see you putting in the work on earning my heart back before I would have been able to walk that out, I believe. But looking back at that, like I remember so quickly I could put myself in those emotions and I do when we sit with other couples walking out this unfortunate scenario. But that reality that, man, again, someone else has parts of my husband's heart that I never knew. And that reality that, is any of it true? Like that fear of, man, if I didn't know parts of this, does that mean everything else is a lie? And I think when you're walking through any form of grief, a lot of those questions can bubble up. Like for me, I'm so thankful for the counselor that I had and the guidance that I had of someone else who had not only lived and walked through our similar scenario, but was capable of sitting in that dark space with me and giving me hope and encouragement. Because honestly, I didn't know 8 years in, and then here we are 7 years later. And this breath, it was like, man, am I going to walk in forgiveness, or is this my out? Like, am I done? And that was a daily choice for a while. That was a daily battle. That was a choice that I needed to make that wasn't just going to affect me. It was going to affect our boys. It was going to affect our future generations. And again, not everyone should stay. I never felt release. And I think it was because I was seeing God do so much in you. But it doesn't mean that the healing journey was any lighter or like any easier, if that makes sense.
I mean, it was the grace of God that allowed you to see 7 years, and I definitely am not a proponent of hiding that stuff. I don't at all. At the time, that's what I did because that's what I knew and that's where I was at, fears and all the doubts and the worries, and that's where I was at. But now I'm on the other side of that, and I'm just always the guy that says all the details aren't needed, but truth, there has to be a vulnerability and openness and a truth between a husband and a wife. If you have closets, if you have doors that are shut and sealed that you refuse to open, it does alter action and behavior.
I would push back a little bit on the details scenario because I think it is different depending on the couple. I think some
For sure.
couples, some spouses need the details. And I think depending on your scenario, you get to decide
Yeah.
what that looks like for you.
Yeah, I think some, and I guess we've had them both, right? Like our story was your heart needed them. If you're going to start to rebuild trust, and I remember this because I did what many do. Um, I tried to slowly rip the Band-Aid. So I tried to go, okay, here's what's going to happen. You asked me a question. Have I ever been unfaithful? Yes. So then you followed up a question. And that day we had conversations, but then we stopped. Well, it wasn't then until months later that you had another question. Well, what about, like, how did this look? Because you're still wrestling with all this trauma of what you've just been told.
Well, all of those memories were attached to my own memories. Like, your shame and guilt and the actions you were taking were also connected directly to my memories of what we were doing at that season of life.
Mm,
And so it goes back to, man, was I not enough? It goes back to questioning your own self. It goes back to, what did I miss? How naive am I? How gullible am I? It almost becomes this point of, how did I miss this?
yeah.
And you begin to doubt your own self. Like, if I could miss this, how could I ever guard my heart to miss it again? Who's to say I won't again? I can't trust myself. And I think even more terrifyingly than not being able to trust your spouse is to not feel like, can I even trust myself?
Mm,
Would I miss these flags again? Did I miss them all along? Did I miss it when I married this man? I mean, literally, these are the thoughts that happen when you're walking through such extreme betrayal. And so that was real for me.
so how do you, so if you start questioning, like, even yourself, because it's crazy, from the one who broke trust, I was like, I can honestly go, no, no, no. I even started off today going, like, it was my own selfish and pride. You did nothing. But that's a real thing you feel, right? Like, this didn't just, like, maybe you didn't do anything, but innately you can't help but think, could I have done more for this not to happen? So how did that journey look like when you start realizing, either A, wow, I did see some gaps, and so I knew how to walk that out now with, this was done to me, but I found gaps within myself that I could walk out with the Lord's help? Or did you just come to this knowledge and agreement that, no, he chose this was not me? Or was it kind of a merging of two worlds?
I think it was both. And I think I I remember feeling like, I knew that I knew there were moments and there were flags that I had missed. There were moments, especially in those early years, where the emotional temperature in our home was just so volatile. But if I did ask a question, it was shot down, and I was gaslit in a way that's ridiculous. Why would you ever think that, right? And so when I saw inconsistencies in you, or I saw red flags in you, and those things were shot down and made me to feel like I'm the one that's making too much of a scenario that didn't sit right with me or whatever, there was this resolution inside of me that thought, that won't happen again.
Mm,
Like, I won't be belittled again. I won't be put in my place again. If I have a fear or a concern and you won't take it tenderly and gently and address it and correct it, that's my answer on whether or not we'll be able to restore. And thank goodness, like, when I brought you my pain and my anger, oh, good Lord, the anger that I brought you, like, vicious anger. The anger and the frustration when I brought it to you, instead of you doing what you had done at the beginning of our marriage before you were healed and walking through, like, so much life change, you took it and you were like, I'm so sorry I've done this to you. How can I help repair you? How can I help repair your heart? And honestly, that's the only reason why I believe that we're here today. And so when we sit with couples and the person who is harmed or wounded isn't capable of holding that space, sometimes those are the ones that we say, I don't know that
mm,
this is worth working on or fixing, because we've got to be capable of taking that pain, especially if we've caused it, and helping that person heal,
yeah.
even without necessarily the reward of the relationship moving forward, because you're not promised that. You in those moments weren't promised that. And there were days that I don't know that both of us knew what was going to happen to our marriage. But it wasn't about that. It was about you getting healthy and being open and honest with all parts, and me getting healthy in all parts of my heart.
Yeah.
And then saying, okay, is this something we can start to rebuild trust, or is this not possible?
For me, it was a real, I had the knowledge and true belief in my heart that I had all this shame and guilt within me. It was like, and I tell people all the time, it was like I was walking around carrying a 50-pound brick on my chest because I just was waiting. The shame and the guilt were so heavy, and the condemnation was so real in my life. And in that 2013, the one thing that Easter did for me was I finally was able. There was no more, like, I had thrown the brick off my chest. Well, that's the last thing that I had on me. I am now, wow, that's been so heavy for so long. I'm so glad it's finally out there. It sucks, and it's about to get bad. And I didn't realize that when I had finally slung that 50-pound brick off my chest, it landed on yours. Then it became I was a dog about it. I was going to help you get out. I was so sad that I had taken this off me and dumped it on you, and see you squirming now under a rock, that it was like, I'm going to do whatever I can to get this off.
Do you think in that moment that, obviously I would believe you would want to have our marriage still, but do you believe in that moment you were so dogmatic about helping me heal just so that our marriage would work out?
That I can answer very easily, and the answer was no. Because I remember in 2014, it was right around February, March of 2014. We now had been about a year. We had relapsed, like it had been a year of going through this. Then I ripped the rest of a Band-Aid off. We go back in, and I remember you coming down the stairs one day.
To clarify, relapse meaning you were letting me know more details of the story, not stepping, like making any poor choices. When you
Oh,
say
no, no, no.
relapse,
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
just
Yeah. I would never, had never, will never, and haven't ever relapsed, if you will.
yeah. So
So,
clarify.
but I was more of my story was coming out. We had finally emptied everything out. I'd given all the details, you know, bore my soul. And I remember you coming down the stairs. At that point, you had Logan in a bag, and you walked out the front door. And I remember asking where you were going. You said, I'm leaving. I'll pick the boys up from school, and I'm not sure that I'll be coming home anymore. I just can't do this. And I remember, Danette, the front door shutting. I was in the living room, and I fell to my knees. And in that moment, something came out of me that earnestly I've lived from that day forward. And I remember saying, God, everything that I love on this earth just walked out that front door. My wife and my kids, and they're gone. And I know after all this that we've been going through for the last year, they're not coming back. So in that moment on my knees, I really felt like, okay, I'm about to get a divorce, and this is going to be bad. But I remember saying, everything that I love has walked out that door. And I know, Lord, they're not coming back. But I'm telling you that when I stand up from my knees, God, I will love you harder and serve you greater tomorrow than I'm even going to do today. Because my passion and my love in that moment was, God, I'm going to seek you. I don't know what to do, but I have changed. I am changed, and I'm passionately going to pursue you. Now, later on that night, you walked back in the door, and I remember going like, wait, what are you doing? And you're like, but man, the Lord spoke to me, and I just need to know the truth. I need to know honesty so we can begin to heal, and we begin to walk that journey out. My getting better, it was I need to be a better human, more secure, love God more passionately, serve people. I need to do that for me. I need the identity as a child of God. I need that for me. This was not I'm going to do better so that I can save my marriage. Um, I think that's a lot of guys that I get the privilege to walk alongside of now. That's the initial. And maybe March of 2013, maybe that was my play. What do I do just to save my marriage? But in April, it was not this was man, what do I do to be a better version of me so that I can serve God greater? I think initially our flesh goes, just tell me the X's and O's that I can save my marriage so that I can keep this picture going of what everyone sees.
Yeah.
But the problem is everyone sees the pictures that we present. If the brokenness and the emptiness is inside of a human and no one ever sees that, well, you can't keep that facade going for long. That facade at some point will collapse. And who are you when the facade finally comes crumbling down? Who are you as a person will determine how you will respond and rebound from this moment. And, I think until you start realizing the vulnerability, the openness, the ability to go, I've dumped 50 pounds on my spouse and now I need to help them out from underneath it. I'm going to carry this pain with them. If I cause this pain by my actions, I'm going to help carry the load. And that was my MO, because again, 7 years I had fallen deeply in love with the Lord. I began to love you and our boys differently than I ever done it before. And 2013, 2014, though we had to fight hell for God to do everything he did, man, I was passionately fighting for the things that I had grown deeply in love with.
Yeah. I think for me, the repentant heart and the constant posture of getting low no matter what I needed was a saving grace for us.
Mm.
I think, unfortunately, when we sit with some couples, the party who's done the wounding, the party who's done the hurt in the marriage expects trust to be rebuilt immediately,
Mm.
trust to be reciprocated immediately, understanding and transparency to not be needed, or understanding to be needed, but not necessarily transparency. And it didn't matter what I requested of you, you met me there, whether or not it was full access to your location at all times. Questions to this day, I can ask you, hey, where are you headed today? There's no secret. I could look at your location, and if something's weird, because I thought you were going to be at this place and you're at this place. Oh yeah, I had to stop by XYZ. And you know what those questions are coming from. Those questions aren't coming from a place of, well, I mean, now they typically are coming from a place of just curiosity. But in those early days, especially, they weren't coming from a place of curiosity. They were coming from a place of, I need to know exactly what you're doing and who exactly you're with. And what's wild is the broken trust had actually happened so early on. And then you give your heart to Christ and to change your life. And then years later it comes out. But for me, that rawness and that trust was just as raw as yesterday.
Yeah.
And so what we can see so often is like this wall of, well, you just need to get over it. You need to trust me. And I'm telling you, that posture is so, 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 so damaging.
Yeah.
Because it does nothing to rebuild your spouse's heart. It does nothing to undergird that emotional connection. It does nothing to breathe trust. And it goes back to that like shifty foundation of, unless I know that you're solid, unless I know you can handle my pain, unless I know that you're capable of helping me put these bricks back on, we don't have a foundation.
Yeah. We love saying that too. Trust is a wall that we build every single day.
Mm.
And that day in 2013, that wall was literally knocked down to the floor. 0 bricks. And we had a foundation that both of us loved Jesus. That was it. And
Barely it. Yeah.
I saw, that every day I could choose to put a brick back in that wall of trust, or I could choose to take a brick off. And if it was, I need your location, I could fight for that. You don't need to know. I'm a grown man. 7 years. Well, we didn't even talk about this stuff in 7 years. You've seen me love Jesus. You want to know my location? I'm at the church. I'm at the library. I'm at ministering to somebody, I could have taken that posture, but it would have removed a brick in the wall. Just wasn't. Was it truth? Maybe, but it wasn't going to be the way that I rebuilt trust. Me putting another brick was full access. It didn't matter to me. You know anything? Which that's the way I believe relationships work anyway, right? Like, it's full access to one's heart. Where are you at? What are you thinking? What do you believe in? Where do you have fears? Where are you happy in our marriage? Where are you not happy? That's just complete access. But at the time, it was, I'm doing this, one, because it should be this way, but two, everything I do is putting a brick up or taking a brick off. And there were times in rebuilding that wall that I was great at building bricks, putting bricks back on the wall. But there were days I took bricks off the wall too. Maybe unintentionally. Definitely wasn't out there trying to, but if I drove somewhere and didn't tell you, I remember those. It was when I left the stop, I'm leaving. It says in about 15 minutes, I'll call you when I get there. I mean, I remember them, and part of me was like, you see my action. You see where I'm at. What I got to tell you. But I'm rebuilding trust.
Yeah, you allowed me to have those moments, and you were fully transparent. You're not perfect as far as like you just said, there were moments maybe you didn't answer just correctly, but I also remember not only were you vulnerable with that, you were also very strong about new boundaries. You were very guarded and would share those boundaries with me in order to safeguard your heart and in order to save my heart. I'm not going to take certain meetings with the opposite sex. I'm not going to drive anywhere if I have to go, on a coffee appointment or whatever. I'm not going to minister or counsel someone without another person in the room. You took extra steps in order to safeguard not just your heart, because I really feel like you were in a good, whole, healed place, but you took those steps to guard my heart, to protect me. And looking back, like, that was huge for me. That was huge for me. And a lot of people won't do that. A lot of men specifically won't do that.
And that's this is our story and how it worked for us, right?
Yeah.
I'm thankful that here we are, almost 21 years removed from that, and able to sit and talk, able to walk other couples, able to give tools of hope, and able to give tools that we can say, I don't think these work. No, we know they work because we did them. Now, somebody else may choose a different set of tools, whatever. But honesty, vulnerability, openness, those were non-negotiables in that season. And I'll just encourage you, like, our story is our story, and you can't, in a 30-minute podcast,
it's actually been an hour already. I know.
Has it? You can't, in 1 hour, give credence to almost 29 years of marriage and all that we've walked through. But what we want to do is just give an honest approach at a story. Our marriage is our story. And there are parts of this book, chapters, that we hate in our book. There are chapters that we love in our book. But we don't want to negate the hard chapters and the hurtful chapters when we know that many times it's those stories that can radically impact the life of another household.
Yeah.
They hear two people talking about it and go, wow, if those two can, maybe we can. And then they seek help, and then they get to this place where they can. And then maybe their story now becomes a story that radically transforms others. And so we did this today, one, because we haven't really ever talked in depth about it. There may be questions that you put in the comment section that we answer, on another podcast. How did we deal with this? And how do we go through this? We want to get into that vulnerability. But we also wanted to share our story as we begin a new season of podcast where we share other stories as well. Denette and I know that there's power in a story, that it changes the life of the hearer many times.
I want to add, like, And our story's not for everybody, right? There might be people watching this that are like, man, I could never, or you think differently, and that's okay. But we also, even though our story is hard and it's ugly, and it's broken, we refuse to shy away from the broken, hard, dark parts
Yeah.
because it is able to actually help someone else, even if that person isn't you, right? We know that the people that it will help are worth the vulnerability and the pain um, that we have to actually associate with and step into in order to help others. And so, yeah.
So what we want to do is we want to encourage you. We're going to put a link below, and on our website is a link to share your story.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to start having couples on here where we just talk about their story.
Yeah.
Great parts of their story where they've seen massive movements and how they rejoiced and loved in it. Hard stories, maybe, that they've overcome a lot, broken trust and things of that nature, and addictions and all the things that you could walk through. But we want to talk about like the trajectory of stories. We want you to share yours. And so you're going to start seeing a whole new season with other couples on here just talking about the redeeming factor of marriage, what it looks like to have walked through anything, come out the other side, so that we can use our stories to powerfully, radically transform the lives of others.
Yeah. So if you want to join us, if you would like to share your story, or you know that some part of your story, even if it's hard, may encourage someone else, we would love for you to just connect with us at that link below and let us know that you'd like to be on the podcast, and we'd love to have you. So, yeah.
Listen,
Thank you. Yeah.
I love you.
I love you too.
Thank you for the grace and the patience and the forgiveness that you have walked out in almost 29 years. There's none of that. I don't take it for granted. Truly thankful to the Lord for what he's done in us.
Yeah.
Listen, we love y'all, and we'll see you on the next one.